More than 10 people tested positive for COVID-19 on the first day South Korea required a negative PCR test from travelers from China after entering the country. The infected came from a group of just over 100 people who received their results. Big banks in the U.S. are expecting yet another gray economic outlook for the new year. They're also predicting further rate cuts by the Fed, which will help the economy rebound late in 2023. And Q claims hundreds of Russian troops were killed in a Ukrainian attack on New Year's Eve. The news comes as Russia, in a rare move, officially announced military losses while disputing the number of casualties. Good morning and welcome to New Day at Arirang. As of 5 p.m. Monday, 13 travelers coming in from China have tested positive for COVID-19 following mandatory PCR tests for all arrivals from the country. Health authorities say all 13 were asymptomatic. However, the total tally is expected to increase as the test results for all travelers have not been counted yet. Under the new restrictions, all arrivals from China are obliged to undergo a PCR test within a day of arriving in South Korea. Now, foreign travelers must remain in separate facilities until their test results are confirmed, while South Korean nationals and foreigners with residency status returning to the country have to quarantine at their residence after the test. The majority of economists at 23 big banks predict a U.S. recession this year or next, according to a survey by the Wall Street Journal. The Fed Reserve is expected to cut its rates in the third or fourth quarter. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
More than two-thirds of economists at 23 big banks that do business with the Federal Reserve predict the U.S. will have a recession in 2023. Two others predict a recession in 2024. That's according to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Monday based on analysis by a collection of trading firms and investment banks such as Barclays, Bank of America, TD Securities, and UBS Group. The banks explained that the reasons for their gloomy forecasts include the decline of savings made during the pandemic and a housing market slump, as well as a tightening of lending standards by banks. The economists at the banks also say the forecast is due to Federal Reserve decisions which saw rates increase 7 times in 2022 in a bid to curb inflation. The Fed pushed its benchmark from a range of 0% to 0.25% to the current 4.25% to 4.50%, a 15-year high. It was also signaled in December that the Fed plans to keep raising rates to between 5% and 5.5% in 2023. The higher rates are expected to push the unemployment level up. However, economists say it will be a relatively mild recession as the economy is expected to rebound late in 2023 when the Fed begins to cut its rates. Most outlooks predict the Fed will raise interest rates in the first quarter, pause in the second, and begin cutting rates in the third or fourth quarter. Despite the change, economists predict the U.S. economy will grow much more slowly than it has over the past 20 years. They forecast growth for the year to slow to about 0.5% on average, whereas the economy grew at an average pace of 2.1% from 2012 to 2021. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Ukraine says it carried out an attack in the occupied region of Donetsk, claiming to have killed 400 Russian soldiers in the process. Russia denies the number of casualties was so high as Kremlin continued attacks in the Ukrainian infrastructure. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Ukrainian forces on Sunday fired rockets at a facility in the eastern Donetsk region where Russian soldiers were stationed, claiming to have killed 400 Russian troops with 300 others injured in the process. However, the claim was rebutted by Russia's defense ministry, which says only 63 Russian soldiers were killed. Neither figures have been independently confirmed. Nevertheless, regardless of the actual figure, the attack marks one of the deadliest against Kremlin forces since the war began more than 10 months ago, not to mention the highest number of deaths acknowledged by Moscow in a single incident. According to Russia's defense ministry, Ukrainian forces fired 6 rockets using the U.S.-made HIMARS rocket system at a building housing Russian troops. Meanwhile, Russia continued its offensives, having deployed multiple exploding drones in another nighttime attack on Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say Moscow is continuing its strategy of using bombardments to target the country's energy infrastructure and wear down Ukrainian resistance to its invasion. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Monday also echoed those remarks.
We have information that Russia is planning a protracted attack using Shahid drones. It is probably banking on exhaustion, exhausting our people, our anti-aircraft defenses, our energy. But we act and do everything so that the terrorists fall in their aim, as all their others have failed.
The Shahed drone refers to Iranian-made drones that Russia has been using in its offensives. However, Iran has previously denied that it had supplied Russia with military weapons. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meeting guests from the legislative and judicial branches for the new year, South Korean President Yoon renews his will to normalize the economy, saying he will get rid of evils that block economic growth. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
At a gathering of 200 government officials, politicians, and leaders from different sectors for a New Year's greeting, President Yoon said he would prioritize people's livelihoods on the first Monday of 2023. He also urged everyone to work together to speed up the normalization of the country's economy, vowing to quickly eliminate obstacles standing in the way of the nation's economic growth and development.
기득권의 저항에 쉽게 무너진다면 우리의 지속 가능한 번영도 어렵게 됩니다. 위기는 도전의 의지와 혁신 역량을 통해 번영과 도약을 이끄는 기회가 되었음을 우리는 세계사에서 많이 목격했습니다. 여기 계신 모든 분들께서 힘을 모아주시고 도와주시기를 부탁드립니다.
He also said the country must strongly defend its laws and principles. Then, re-emphasizing his New Year's address from day before, he stated his intention to reform the country's labor, education, and pensions. The president said it will be a hard path, but something South Korea can avoid as it's the will of its people. His speech also highlighted the need to work with the international community.
특히 보편적 가치에 기반한 국제사회와의 연대는 우리 헌법 가치일 뿐 아니라 우리나라의 국익을 지키는 길이고 우리에게 경제적으로 더 많은 기회를 줄 것입니다.
This New Year's meeting with officials across government branches and public and private sectors was held at the former presidential compound's event hall in the Blue House. Despite this, no members of the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea were there as the party had a pre-scheduled event. The 40-minute meeting wrapped up with the Prime Minister Han Duck-soo sharing the country's pledge for 2023. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korean ambassador to the U.S. Jo Tae-yong is looking forward to achieving a comprehensive strategic alliance between Seoul and Washington in 2023. In his New Year's post on social media on Monday, Jo highlighted the goal, which was promised at a state summit last year, as the two countries marked the 70th anniversary of a mutual defense treaty this year. The veteran diplomat also vowed to cooperate with the U.S. in all matters while prioritizing the interests of South Korea. He then emphasized the new year also marks 120 years of immigration of Korean nationals to the U.S., thanking those who made the move for bridging the two nations, including the 4 House members with Korean heritage elected in the midterm election. The South Korean government expects North Korea's hostility towards Seoul and Washington to escalate, meaning more provocations. It's coming from its analysis of North Korea's diplomatic and military policy direction for the new year. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Mo-gyun with the details.
South Korea's Unification Ministry says North Korea is focusing on instilling hostility against Seoul and Washington while reiterating its plans to continue with its acts of provocation in the new year.
By looking at how North Korea has presented its passage of a law allowing a preemptive nuclear strike as an accomplishment, and how it mentioned plans to upsize and develop its arsenal, the regime is expected to boost the development of its nuclear and missile capabilities again this year.
The ministry condemned Pyongyang for using nuclear arms to threaten people living on the same peninsula and urged the regime to come onto a path for peace and prosperity on the peninsula. Such remarks came as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un defined South Korea as a, quote, undoubtful enemy and stressed the need to exponentially increase the regime's nuclear arsenal. The regime not only spoke their words, but also put such policies in action by firing a short-range ballistic missile into the East Sea on New Year's Day. Seoul's Unification Ministry also took note of Kim's daughter, who made her third public appearance on the North state media. Kim Ju-ae was seen walking hand-in-hand with Kim Jong-un at what appears to be a missile station. The ministry vowed to keep close tabs on future reports of Kim Ju-ae, who is presumed to be Kim's second child. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
Now, more details were unveiled on Monday on South Korea's test flight of a domestically developed solid fuel space rocket last week. Our Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea assesses that its second test flight of a solid fuel space launch vehicle appears to be more successful than the first one. The Defense Ministry on Monday released a video of the homegrown rocket being launched and entering space. It said the state-run Agency for Defense Development tested the second, third, and fourth stages of the launch, including the separation of a dummy satellite. It was able to verify the engine combustion for these stages as well. Last Friday, the Defense Ministry confirmed the success of the vehicle's second launch, which came 9 months after the first test. The rocket is designed to put a small satellite into a low orbit for surveillance operations. It's aiming to launch an actual satellite in 2025. Compared with liquid fuel space vehicles, solid fuel rockets have simpler structure and are more cost-effective to launch. The success of the test launch marks an important milestone in building the military's independence in the field, as well as the country's goal of becoming the seventh largest player in the global space industry. The ministry also said it's looking to transfer essential technologies to the private sector to boost the industry and create economic effects. Some citizens across the country witnessed Friday's launch and reported an unidentified flying object in the sky. The ministry explained that the test was conducted at night due to safety and weather conditions and to minimize disruptions for fishermen. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
North Korea has dived into the new year with ballistic missiles and harsh words against the South and the U.S. On today's On Point, we take a close look at what we can expect from the regime in 2023 with Mr. Stephen Norberg. He's the president of Asia Dialogue and also an adjunct researcher scholar at Columbia University. Welcome, Mr. Norberg.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. First of all, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has once again called for an exponential increase in nuclear warheads. Now, towards the end of 2022, there was much speculation over the North conducting a nuclear test, with watchers at one point saying the test was imminent. Do we see a test coming in anytime soon?
Well, I think the chances have increased greatly. We've just finished a year with record missile tests. We need to be concerned about the likelihood of a seventh nuclear test, which is an important step for them relative to the non-proliferation regime, and that should concern us all. He is no doubt, Kim Jong-un, listening to his scientists. They're looking for a next-generation capability, miniaturization, guidance, other things they're trying to test. And given the uptick in the war of words, the tensions between North and South Korea, and regionally, it's likely that we will see it in coming months, certainly between now and September. By the way, I thought last year was very unlikely for a number of reasons, including coming out of the pandemic and undercutting China and Russia in their quest for sanctions relief for North Korea. That's still a reality. It works against North Korea by way of any push for sanctions reduction, but we all need to be concerned. And we need to be concerned about the potential for mishap, for miscalculation, for accident, and that means there's a call really for better risk reduction efforts on all our parts.
Right, that is surely concerning, regardless of the timing of a nuclear test. Now, Kim Jong-un kicked off the new year with a visit to a Pyongyang factory to inspect mass-produced missiles. In what is a rare move, the North publicly showed off bundles of medium-range ballistic missiles that are being produced. What's the motivation behind this?
Well, it's very clear that Kim is trying to project a more solid military image. Certainly with the reshuffle among senior military elite, with his recent meeting that has emphasized military capabilities with the missile tests and with the potential nuclear tests. That could be because of economic woes at home and the need to distract the population. Certainly it is an issue for internal legitimacy for the Kim regime. He may also be doing that to signal to the United States and the West that they're serious about development. And furthermore, he may be showing to Russia involved in Ukraine and others a capability and the ability to sell medium-range missiles, and that should concern us as well.
Right, and as you just briefly mentioned, there was a major reshuffle to the North's top military officials, and that includes the dismissal of the Secretary of the ruling party Central Committee, Park Jong-chun. Now, why was there a leadership reshuffle of this kind at this time of the year?
Well, it's not abnormal to have a reshuffle, and clearly one doesn't want to be a number two because that has led to a lot of change in the past. We have seen with Park demotion, promotion, and he seems to be out of the picture for the moment. It is a way, kind of in the Stalinist tradition, for the DPRK leaders to assert control, to show the elites that they're in power and that they have the ultimate call on who is in what position. Perhaps it also signals some dissatisfaction with the idea that there may have been 3 South Korean drones that went undetected after North Korea sent 5 drones into the ROK space, and so perhaps that's a way of showing displeasure as well. But not uncommon to see a reshuffle of leadership, and so we'll see if he reemerges on the scene at some point. But KJU, Kim Jong-un, trying to show his absolute control in that regard.
Sure, North Korea certainly remains on top of our agenda, even in the new year. All right, thank you for joining us, Mr. Norber, this morning and also afternoon for you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Have a good day.
You as well. Thank you.
Now, for a look at the news from around the world, we turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang News Center. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning to you.
All right, let's start in Australia, where at least 4 people have been killed and several injured after 2 helicopters crashed into each other.
Well, that's right. The helicopters collided in mid-air at Gold Coast's main beach on Monday local time. Now, one of the helicopters was able to make an emergency landing, but the other crashed into the ground. All those killed were seated in the same crashed aircraft with 3 others on board in serious condition. Now, those on the other helicopter escaped with minor injuries. Footage of the incident shows the 2 helicopters collided when one attempted to land while the other was taking off. Both aircraft were operated by SeaWorld Helicopters, which provides tourist flights in the area. Moving over to Uganda, where the death toll from a New Year's Eve car crash has now climbed to 10. The crash happened at a shopping mall in the capital, Kampala, where some 500 people attempted to rush out of a single exit to see a midnight fireworks display. Now, the exit was the only one of the 5 exits that was open, creating a bottleneck that led to victims being trampled and suffocated. The crowd of mostly young people were attending a New Year's concert inside the shopping center. According to local authorities, the organizer of the concert was arrested in connection to the incident on Monday. Now, thousands of people have gathered in the Brazilian city of Santos to pay their respects at a 24-hour wake honoring the late Brazilian football legend Pelé. The 24-hour wake honoring the footballer started Monday 10 a.m. local time at Vila Belmiro Stadium, home of the Santos Football Club, and this is where Pelé spent almost all of his career. Now there, Pelé's body is lying in state in the center circle of the stadium's field. Following the wake, Pelé will be buried at a private funeral after a procession through the city streets. The 82-year-old former football player died on Thursday after a long battle with colon cancer. Known as one of the world's best players, Pelé is the only footballer ever to have won the World Cup 3 times. And finally, an ancient Egyptian sarcophagus known as the Green Coffin has been returned to Egypt from the United States. The artifact was formally handed over to Egyptian officials by U.S. diplomats on Monday at a ceremony in Cairo. The artifact had been looted by a global art trafficking network from an archaeological site in the North African country in 2008. It reached the U.S. the same year and was rediscovered in 2013 after it was loaned by a collector to the Houston Museum of Natural Science. The repatriation comes amid efforts by Egyptian authorities to stop the trafficking of stolen antiquities and to repatriate its ancient artifacts. The wooden green coffin measures at 2.9 meters and dates back to around 600 BC to 300 BC.
Good morning. Freezing weather continues into the new year. It's a colder start to the day today, and morning temperatures are 1 to 4 degrees lower than the same time yesterday across Korea. So hope you're well dressed in layers. Regions near the coast will be much colder due to sharp winds. Dryness continues to intensify across the East Coast, and especially Gangwon-do province, and the combination of cold and dry conditions raise the risk of fires, so please take precautions against fires. Mostly clear skies and fair air quality will dominate nationwide, but mountainous regions on Jeju and the west coast of Jeollado province could see flurries in the morning. Afternoon highs will be similar to yesterday, but you know that icy winds will drag down the feels-like temperatures. Seoul will be topping out at the freezing mark, Daejeon at 3 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And it seems like we'll have to wait until Thursday to see temperatures returning to norms, with a mix of rain and snow in the forecast in parts of the west on Friday. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That's all we have for this morning at New Day at Arirang. Stay safe wherever you are, and thanks for watching.
꽃 피는 동백섬에